swear it is the floor that is uneven, not my camera, or look at that. Look how uneven that is. Hi guys, my name is Emily. Welcome to my October wrap up. So October of 2017 was pretty decent for me. I got some things read that I really enjoyed. So the first thing that I read in October was Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lana Popovic. When I read the synopsis and heard it was compared to Practical Magic, one of my favorite movies, I definitely wanted to pick this up. So this story is set in Montenegro and it follows the life of two twins in this small isolated community. Iris and Melina, they have magical powers, but their mother doesn't want them to use their gift and doesn't want them to fall in love because she's told them this story about how falling in love will draw the family, like her evil family, to them. They have to keep their gift suppressed so that their family won't find them. It's about these girls who are dealing with this in different ways and dealing with a really unhappy family situation because they don't particularly get along with their mother, who is really like hot and cold emotionally. There were parts of this that I really enjoyed, but all in all, it wasn't what I was expecting. And if this makes sense, it wasn't what I wanted once I knew where the story was going. So I guess what I didn't like was once we learned more about these girls' gift, their magic, these sort of community of folks with this type of magic, it became really gendered and performative. The gift that these folks have is to make things beautiful. You have magic linked to art, magic linked to domestic crafts, which is cool. A revaluing of things that are traditionally women's work is kind of cool. What I didn't like about it was the ways in which that it was performative, and you'll find out later that the performative aspect has a lot to do with men and providing these beautiful things for men. I think I might need to reread it, and I might need to read the second book once it comes out to see how this develops and how these girls use their gift. But right now it sort of sits uncomfortably that for the most part this gift of beauty is used to be beautiful for men. So that's where I'm at with that book. It's not something that I've written off entirely. Like I loved the setting, I loved the atmosphere, I loved the sister relationship and the tension with the mother. You know me, those types of complicated relationships between women, between generations, ticks my boxes in terms of a book that I like. I will give the second book a chance once it comes out, but as of right now I'm sort of sitting somewhat neutrally whether or not I like or dislike this book. The next book I read was From Here to Eternity by Doughty. Now, Caitlin is the author of Smoke It's in Your Eyes, which I just finished and you will see in my November wrap-up. This is Caitlin's second book. It's a series of travel essays basically where she looks at contemporary death and funeral practices from around the world. And it was absolutely fascinating to learn about different practices from around the world and to realize how much I had just accepted North American death practices that are very distanced, very institutionalized, very medicalized as a normal thing. It was fantastic and I would highly recommend it if you are interested in other cultures, if you are interested in death practices, if you are interested in being self-reflexive about your body and about your ideas about death and our death culture, especially in North America. I will leave a link to Caitlin's channel in the description down below so that you can check out her videos. The next book that I read, I listened to on audiobook, but I do plan on rereading in physical form to make notes because it was fascinating. I listened to The Woman Who Rides Like a Man by Tamora Pierce, which is the third book in the Song of the Lioness series, and admittedly in the past I would cite this book as one of my least favorite books in the series. I would actually often skip this book when I would read the quartet because I'm like, nothing happens in it. Listening to it this time, I picked up on so much. So this is the third book in the series. Lana is a fully recognized female knight. She is out to society as a female knight, and she's traveled to the desert and she has encountered the Bashir, which are a tribe of folks that are technically within Tortal's borders, but are a source of conflict for the realm because some of them recognize the king and some of them do not. And so what was fascinating about this is it's a narrative of colonialism, first of all. So Lana ends up moving into this space and through a series of events becomes the tribe shaman. Lana basically facilitates the colonization of the Bashir tribes, which is something that wouldn't have occurred to me as a child reading this. And I think the thing that really made me realize this colonialist narrative was that the person narrating the audiobook did accents. And the minute you hear these accents, and that they're based on accents from real places, is the sort of moment I realized that, oh, like, we're reading everybody without an accent as white, and everybody that we encounter that is a person of color, this narrator has given an accent to, and that links that accent and that fictional place, that fictional tribe of people, to a real contemporary group of people of color. I am now curious moving forward to see how that colonization of the Bashir tribes works. How do the Bashir function in the rest of Tamora Pierce's books? Like, by the time we hit Allie, Lana's daughter, how are the Bashir treated and viewed, if they come up at all? So that's something that I'm going to be looking for, is Tortall this sort of melting pot that sort of encourages folks to assimilate to the white Tortallian capital ways? So that was the one interesting thing that I noticed from the audiobook. The other thing, and I need to go back and read it, was how magic is taught. So in this book, Lana does become the shaman of the tribe, and she is teaching young folks how to use and control their gift, which is interesting because Lana herself is not university educated. She was educated by a sort of guardian in her youth, and then didn't really receive more magical training until she hit page training with Duke Roger, who taught magic classes, but we don't really see what's being taught in those classes. Whereas in The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, we actually see Lana teaching lessons and talking about how you have to start with small things before you can work to bigger things, and she likens it to learning to weave. So before you're allowed to physically touch the loom, you have to learn how to clean and card and spin wool. Magic works the same. You have to start at the basics before you can work the big spells. So I thought that was super fascinating. I am excited to go back and read the physical book and make notes for my Tamora Pierce series that I'm doing. The audiobooks were super interesting, and I liked the audiobook so much that I've been listening to some of the other books, and I will get to that in the rest of this. But now we're going to switch gears and talk about the advanced reader copy of The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I was given access to this book in exchange for an honest review. The Cruel Prince is, again, about sisters. We have, at the beginning of the book, 3 girls in the mortal realm. We have twins and we have an older sister, and all of a sudden their life in the human realm is shattered when this bloodthirsty fairy comes in and kills their mother and father and takes them away. And it turns out that their eldest sister is actually a stepsister, the product of this fairy and their mortal mother. And their mother escaped from the fairy realms to live in the mortal realms and hide from her husband. And so the 2 children that she had with her new husband, her fairy husband feels obligated to look after because they are still tied, blood tied to his daughter in some way. So skip to the present, we have these girls in the fairy realm who are othered, who are hated by their peers and tormented by their peers. The 2 mortal twins are living in this space and dealing with being other and being on the outside in different ways. One twin decides that joining a sort of spy initiative for one of the fairy royalty is the way to go to get a position of power and to be valued by fairy society. And the other twin decides that really marrying a fairy and using marriage to secure a place of respect in society is the way to go. It was really, really good. The minute I realized it was about fairies, I was like, oh my god, fairies. Like, the books that I've encountered about fairies all seem pretty silly, but I got sucked into this world, I got sucked into this story. I really loved the family relationships, I loved the sort of messy political things that were happening. I loved the fairy world, like the way it was fleshed out. It felt really vivid and vibrant, and I'm so excited for the next book in this series. This is a sucky thing about being sent arcs and reading them before they're even published, is that you read this book months before this comes out. So this is coming out in January 2018. So the sequel is a hell of a ways away. This book isn't even out and I want the sequel. That's how much I enjoyed this experience. So The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, loved it once it comes out. If you are into fantasy, fairies, if you read the Throne of Glass books and you didn't like how special snowflake Selena was, you will like the narrator Jude in The Cruel Prince because she is still like a spy and feisty and like a hard-hitting character, but she is not a special snowflake. At least in book 1, she's not a special snowflake. The next book that I read was Lioness, Rampant, the 4th book in the Song of the Lioness series by Tamora Pierce. This, again, I listened to on audio. Again, this is a book that usually I read the first 2 and then maybe I would read this 4th book, skipping over the 3rd one. This is a book that, again, looks at magic, looks at Lana as a sorceress, but also looks at Lana's love life. So something that totally went over my head as a child is that Lana has had sex outside of marriage with 3 different men. And like that's totally okay. Like how many young adult books do you have, young adult series do you have where a character just sort of is physically intimate with multiple partners and there's no stigma attached to it? Like it's pretty frickin' progressive, especially considering when this was written. There's like really no stigma attached to Lana having sexual desire and acting on that sexual desire, which was pretty cool. So again, really enjoyed that. I will be rereading the physical copy to make notes and to review for my Tamora Pierce series. And the last book that I read, again on audio, is Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. This is the 1st book in the Immortals quartet. This is Dane's story. This is where we're introduced to Dane. Now, the difference between these audiobooks and the Immortals audiobooks is that the Immortals audiobooks are a full cast recording. So Tamora Pierce is narrating and then you have various voice actors playing the different characters, which is really cool because it's not just one person doing accents, you actually have different voices. It makes it a really dynamic listening experience. The one thing that I don't like is whoever they have cast to play Dane makes Dane sound hysterical. Whenever Dane gets a little bit emotive or emotional, she suddenly becomes the whiniest, most hysterical is the word. She is the most hysterical character, and it will be like nothing. Like, please be gentle with my book, you threw it on the bed, and she'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe that you are freaking out at me for throwing the book on the bed. I had to put the book down. How can you accuse me of throwing your book around? And it's like, Dane, you are literally the most annoying human. And that's not how Dane reads in the book. Like, Hermione, throughout the Harry Potter series, you will often hear her shriek or cry shrilly or hiss. You can argue that if someone were to do a voice where Hermione is emotive and sounding someone hysterical, that it's there in the text. Dane doesn't have those textual markers. Like, I have never in the written text interpreted Dane as hysterical. I read her as very like strong and willful and stubborn, but not hysterical, and how the person has chosen to read Dane on the audiobooks makes her hysterical. Listening to the audiobooks, it's one way to sort of consume a story, but it's making me dislike Dane, so I want to reread the books so that I like Dane again. So these are all the books that I read in October. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite read from October was, and let me know your thoughts on any of these books that I've talked about here today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!